Hello and welcome to Brett's blog. I'm your host, Brett, and we are, if you've been following along for a short while now and you were able to see my welcome post and my thank you post and then my 4-video series on America's criminal justice system, which now you understand we refer to as America's prison industrial complex, then you've heard that I'm moving into the end of this foundational series. Foundational meaning that I wanted to lay a base of posts that set the stage for whatever the future of this blog means. This blog was not random. It's not a hobby blog. It's a blog that I created. It's out of my comfort zone, but I felt that there was a distinct social benefit to both the local and regional community in Marin County and the Southwest, and specifically America on a larger basis. If for some reason you've ended up here and you're seeing this and you heard about my blog and you haven't looked around, I would encourage you to go to the front site, writingforfreedom.com, and there's a top menu, and I'd encourage you to please look at my purpose page, my ADR and mediation page, my support page, which has a lot of information on it. Also, there are links, of course, that you can check out. There are writing links, there are legal links, and then there's a tab called 825 Days, and 825 Days is essentially the story of my life, or it's becoming the story of my life. And that was that I was, in July of 2013, I was arrested on a beach in the Philippines for a crime that never happened, and that began a little over 825 days of wrongful imprisonment and the fight of my life, which ended in a trial last October 16th, 2015. Where I was acquitted and some charges were dismissed. So if you happen to be here and you hadn't for some reason seen that, I'd encourage you to go check that out. There's a lot more information that's available that will set that scene. I'm not going to go into that here too often, in any great detail, because it's in other places. But my blog is a place where I'm taking certain issues that are particularly helpful to either informational or educational for the community at large, and it's a place where I can I'm doing some self-therapy. I'm talking about some very painful things that happened to me and things I learned being incarcerated for a number of years. I had a lot of time to think and read and meditate and pray and a number of things, and I learned a lot. I worked very closely with several good lawyers on my defense. And this blog is just going to be, after this foundation, is going to be not random, but various different issues from certain issues in my book that I thought were important or sexy or entertaining, to issues from that experience that I learned about the criminal justice system and other issues that would be helpful and educational to many, many people from a very diverse range in America. So that's why I'm here. And this video, this post is the first post in the last series of that foundation, or that base before I get going. And so this series, I've kind of quit. I've kind of quit speculating how many posts it will take. I was wrong. I thought the last series would be 3 posts, turned out to be 4. I can't tell you how many posts it'll be. It's about the same length. It may be 3 or 4. I do want to note, though, that the last 2 posts are very important and are going to set the stage for some very exciting things that are coming. And so I'm working with my web developer on the calendar, and those posts in particular I'm confident will be on the calendar, so that if you don't have time to come here, you can just buzz by the home page, check out the calendar, and know when those posts are going to be coming up. So So with that then, let me introduce this series. This short series is what I'm calling Truth in Justice. Not truth and justice, but truth in justice. Not truth, 3 words, truth in justice. And this is important to me because of the various things that I learned through running a couple of companies, working and ultimately paying hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to very competent attorneys, and then my own legal experience being wrongfully accused of a crime that never happened, and ultimately successfully defending against those charges, though it was a long, painful process. And I wanted to talk to you about the role truth plays, or doesn't play, in that process. And then, like I mentioned, I'll be concluding with 2 kind of edgy, very exciting posts, which are just going to launch this into whatever the future holds for this blog and my website. So with that then, what is truth? Let me tell you that a pretty talented attorney, who I'm not going to name now, sat across from me in a Starbucks in San Jose, California, in 2011, I think, and told me that the truth is the ultimate defense. If you happen to read my book, you'll be introduced to him a little more, and he's going to come up in the future. I may drop his name accidentally just for fun, but I don't know if Christian would want me to do that or not, so I probably won't just yet, but that was a little poke. But he told me that truth is the ultimate defense. Now, that may be true in a law school classroom, and that may be true ultimately in the universe, maybe. But really what he was doing was he was brushing me, in retrospect, what he was really doing was brushing me aside. And he was not really informing. I was paying him at this point $400 or $500 an hour. And we were having a business meeting about legal issues for a meeting that he and I and several others were about to go into. And in retrospect, really, he was disrespecting me. What he was saying was, the law is too complicated for you to understand, so I'm going to give you the first-year law student answer, and it sounds sexy, and that's what most Americans think anyways, and so that's the end of that. And I don't think that he was incorrect in some very lofty way, but functionally he was completely incorrect. Or nearly completely incorrect, as my experiences with him years later would indicate. So what is truth in terms of in the justice system? I'm not talking about universal truth. I don't want to even begin to get into a conversation with those people who say there is no truth, or what is truth. Truth is truth. You jump off of the Empire State Building, you're going to squish and die. And if you don't, it's going to be a miracle, and you'll be written about all around the world, and you'll spend the rest of your life going around speaking, probably, or writing a book or whatever. But you're going to die. If you drop an apple off the building, it's going to fall and squish. That is truth. 2 + 2 is 4. You can monkey it around all you want, but the truth is the truth. Gravity works, and so on and so forth. But in the justice system, truth is an entirely different thing. And while it may be part of our foundational justice belief system that truth is the ultimate defense, truth is only secondarily pursued within the justice system. It likes to be talked about. And many people slam their hands on the desk and say, this is the truth, and whatever. But that's just a bunch of crap. There are DAs and PAs around the country, hopefully, I pray, a minority, but unfortunately a growing group of people, personified by the Marin County District Attorney, Mr. Ed Barbarian, who are not interested in truth, who could care less what the truth is, because they need to be elected or reelected. They want to be patted on the back and have their egos stroked by their community and be told how great of law enforcement people they are. And lawyers, who are driven by fees in most cases, want the success of winning regardless of what the truth is. My dear friend Christian falls into that category quite negatively, and so so what does that mean? Well, for example, the situation with my friend, we sat alone at a high top table in a Starbucks late morning, and I asked him this question. I don't remember the question I asked. It was related to the issues that we were dealing with, and his response was, "The truth is the ultimate defense." Now, nobody heard that conversation. I didn't record it. I doubt he recorded it. And I don't know anybody else that knows that occurred until I mentioned this here or in my book. So what if he chose to say he never said that? So he's an upstanding lawyer. He probably makes $500,000 a year. I don't know. He's very well paid through his company. He's probably working to become partner. And it may not be in his interest necessarily to admit that this conversation took place or that he said that to me. So if I say that he said that and he says that he didn't, in terms of society and our interpersonal relationships, most of his friends would believe him, most of my friends would believe me, hopefully, and we'd have this issue that nobody else would really know whether that occurred or not. In terms of the justice system, what would happen would be that, let's say I took the stand and I said, Christian told me that the truth is the ultimate defense. And then he took the stand under oath and said, I did not ever say that to him. Then how does the justice system deal with that? Assuming that either of us got to the stand in the first place, which is far from a foregone conclusion in any trial, how would they view that? Well, he might argue that there is no evidence that I said it. Forget for a second your First Amendment right to freedom of speech, your right to an opinion, and forget for a moment that in fact it was the truth. He would probably argue, sidebar, let's say that this simple little question had some ultimate outcome to a bigger, broader case. And let's say that the outcome, the affirmative outcome of that statement is not in his interest or whomever he represents. He could argue and would lie and try to trick the court and argue that he didn't say it because it wouldn't be in his interest. And he would have some bullshit legal rationale for representing his client and upholding some higher good and that this little faux pas, this little white lie, this little perjury is in fact what it really is important and that he has the right. He wouldn't say that out loud. That would get him disbarred. But that's what he would practice theoretically in this theoretical example. The story is true, in fact. This example never happened. It's just an example. Do you see what I'm getting at? So then, for example, the judge would probably have a sidebar with the attorneys and say, oh my goodness, well, did this conversation take place or not? And my attorneys would say, well, my client testified under oath that it did. And his attorney would argue against that and say, Your Honor, there's no evidence that conversation occurred. Can Mr. Richards prove that it occurred? And my attorney would say, Your Honor, this was a private business conversation in the corner of a Starbucks. Both parties were under the understanding that they were not recording each other. There were no minutes. This wasn't a public meeting, even though both represented a public agency in the state of California, even though both were lobbying and fighting for a publicly elected board and a public agency. And even though I was a public employee in that conversation, a public civil employee and subject to all of the transparency laws in the state of California, and even though he, a private attorney working for a private company, was acting and being paid by a public agency, and his role was acting as a public civil employee on our behalf, there were no minutes of this meeting. There was no requirement that there be minutes of this meeting. This was a confidential conversation between a client and an attorney. So So this gets very messy, and courts take this very seriously. Let's see, did the truth happen? Is it real? Well, Mr. Richards can't prove it's real, so maybe it's not real. The specific case law regarding my ability to take the stand and make that affirmative statement aside, because under oath I can choose to make that statement or not. But in the context of this example, where it is in fact real and true, it's entirely possible that the judge would rule that my statement is inadmissible. Truth be damned. This is a big oversimplification, and I apologize, but I'm not a lawyer, and I'm just trying to explain to you what I observed and what I felt the weight of. The truth is far from a certainty. In addition, just some closing thoughts here about this. In addition, that a judge could very well rule that that was not admissible and not allowed for the jury to be heard because there was no corroborating evidence that the truth was in fact the truth. There are a number of problems following that in trials, very real examples that I talk about in my book, where the DA, in my case, fought hard to keep truthful evidence out of the trial. He did not want evidence which revealed the entire truth of the situation that brought us all together in that trial last fall out. And I will go farther to say that it appears, it's my opinion, it appears that he participated in, or at least, at the very least, turned a blind eye to the destruction of actual public records where certain exculpatory evidence existed. Just blew it off, didn't even care, didn't hold the people accountable that destroyed the records, and made no point, absolutely no point in front of the jury of acknowledging or confirming that these very real California public records, which it was illegal to destroy, were in fact gone or missing, let alone what they contained. And because the records were destroyed by the district attorney's prime witnesses, and because they were gone, and because the DA wholly refused to hold those people accountable for their destruction of California public records, and because he refused to acknowledge it, let alone address that, it was very difficult for us to weave that into our defense on our side. My lawyers did the best that they could to bring those issues out, but the three witnesses in particular that I'm referencing here, who later my lawyers perjured themselves on the stand in my trial, simply forgot everything. Or they remembered just the very enough details not to be caught as full-blown perjurers, but then I don't recall, so the information's just gone. And it was absurd. And so this is how truth in the justice system is dealt with. The defense, in my case, was trying to get truthful information and evidence into the record without me having to take the stand, which is a whole nother issue that I'll get into in the future. And the district attorney in this instance was doing everything he can, including gross prosecutor misconduct, to keep truthful evidence out. And these are my very inadequate explanation is absolutely the truth of what I observed and what I experienced. So think about that for this post. That was a bit clunky. You know, I'm doing the best I can, but what I'm sharing with you is just out of my heart, and it's what I observed and experienced. My next post is going to break that down just a little bit and be a little more specific about a couple of areas, and then there will be 2 concluding posts for this Truth in Justice series before we begin moving on. So thank you very much for coming by. I hope you kind of get what I'm trying to communicate, as poorly as I might do that, and I hope you'll stick around and see what comes next. My name's Brett. I hope you have a great day. Thank you very much.